5 years. I never thought in a million years that I would still be sitting in this chair of the Holistically Speaking podcast, still recording this show 5 years later. If you had asked me in June of 2020, do I plan to still be doing this in 5 years? I know my answer would have been, I have no clue. I have no idea. And I might have actually been asked that question, like, where do I want this to go? And back then, it was really just an idea and a creative experience that I was doing with a friend because goodness knows I had done every other bit of media that was out there and covered every platform already with 30 years of experience in broadcasting. I thought, okay, let's do this, right? So here we are 5 years later. And my thought is, what do I do now? What do I do now? How do I celebrate this? And I have to admit, a lot of things ran through my head. Like, how do I celebrate this milestone with almost 200 episodes in the bag and amazing guests that have been luminaries in their field in health and wellness and science and New York Times bestsellers and Amazon and Wall Street Journal bestsellers. And you know what? Just good people that are open to sharing their stories. And I'm like, how do I celebrate that? And of course, my mind went originally to, all right, you got to do the top 10 episodes. That's what you got to do. Downloads and analytics and who was most listened to. And it just didn't feel right to me. I've done episodes like that in the past, but to me, I was like, how can I choose for you what's the best? And it really dawned on me when I was away. I was up in the mountains of Virginia. I'm sitting on the back deck, just surrounded by nature. And I had a couple books with me and my morning coffee. And I thought, that's it. It's the stories behind the stories that make the difference. And you have heard me say this many times on this show that I believe that every guest that comes on, holistically speaking, is like a master class, not just for you, but for me too. When I reach out to folks or when people reach out to me to be on this show, I think to myself, what can I learn from this person and their story? And that's really the deciding factor. Like, how is it going to impact me and will my listeners resonate with it? And of course, I don't know what you take in, what makes a difference in your life, but I really think that if it moves, and inspires me in some way, it's going to impact you. So, sitting there drinking my coffee, I thought, we have had so many amazing guests on the show that have been authors. Like I said, some have been multi New York Times bestselling authors, Amazon, Wall Street Journal, maybe not even best selling. And you know what? That doesn't matter either because that, again, is an analytic. And you might pick up a book that hardly anyone has read and it has touched, moved, and inspired you in some way. And we have had some authors on this show that have made such a difference in this world and haven't hit any lists. And then we've had those who have. So my thought was, that's it. I've been talking about putting together a holistically speaking library for quite some time because as someone that's in the midst of writing her own book, and you've heard me talk about that, I'm really being in the process now as I'm putting it out there to the publishers, the lit agents, and getting some really, really beautiful accolades from some top publishers in the business. I know that every book I read has really made a difference in how I am an author and how I am a writer and how I'm also taking in the information. So that's what I want this episode to be. For me, for you, is an opportunity to explore more in the world of storytelling. Create that list of all of the authors that have been on this show and put them in the notes of this podcast. And that'll live on the Holistically Speaking podcast page. There'll be a page designated to the library of books, and I will keep adding to them. And by doing this, you can read as you choose. If you're listening to this as this episode is just dropped, or you listen to it sometime later, whenever it falls into your lap and hits your ears, this is one of those episodes that absolutely is evergreen. By evergreen, I mean there's no end. There's no end to how this knowledge can be helpful to you. And that's the beauty of podcasting. what I would like to do is give you this because, summertime's usually the time that we take a little time to ourselves, sitting on that back porch in Virginia reading some books. A lot of people are always asking for, I need a book for the beach. I need a book for my trip. What recommendation do you have? We see a lot of that out there on the internet, right? So this is an opportunity to choose from a beautiful selection of books that pair with an author that has been on the show. And then what you can do with that is pick and choose. And I'll put the episode number with the actual book so you know that you can refer back to that episode and watch it at your leisure or listen to it at your leisure, however you get your podcast. If you just take one nugget of information away from that, that's a win. I think about all the books I've read. It's not the 250 pages that have made the difference. Maybe it's one chapter, maybe it's one quote, maybe it's one story within that book. And if you're lucky, maybe it is the whole thing. But if you could take one little piece of information away from a book that you're reading and implement it into your life, and maybe it helps you with your everyday life, maybe it helps you with your healing journey, maybe that's part of you hugging it out with yourself, that is all I ask. And then you can take it one step further, like I said, dive into the episode that pairs with that book. Go back. That's the beauty of podcasting. It never goes away. These episodes live for you to tune in at any time you want and tap into what works for you in that moment. So that is how I would like this episode that I am really calling the masterclass to reach you. It will live here for you. And know that this is 5 years. Think about the difference that 5 years has made in your life. I know there have been so many changes in my own. Look, we dove into this in June of 2020, and we were in the middle of a pandemic. And I think about how 5 years has changed us after COVID, learning to live in more of a digital age, or diving into the world of AI, or just people learning that time is valuable and never promised. And what we do with our time really matters because that's the most important element. That's like creme de la creme of currency, right? Is time. When I think of the last 5 years of my own life and the milestone that we're reaching today and what I'm doing now, 5 years ago, there was no book in process for me. 5 years ago, I didn't have the most beautiful, loving partner that I have now. 5 years ago, I wasn't doing the work. What I'm doing now is even a havening trainer, being able to train people in the work that I do as a havening techniques practitioner, where people are bringing this into their lives. 5 years ago, I wasn't speaking on the kind of stages I'm speaking on. And 5 years ago, this podcast was not where it is today. Being recognized as a top podcast out there, being able to speak about this podcast on the stages and go to conferences, and just where I am as a human being. So I invite you to take a look back at what the last 5 years have been for you. Maybe books have already touched, moved, and inspired you already, and podcasts have. I know I am so moved by other podcasters out there. There are so many more out there now telling their stories, holding space for others to share theirs. And it's really great to see that. And I applaud my fellow podcasters because there's such good content out there that covers everything. And sometimes you just never know if you are making a difference in someone's life. That's the beauty of this kind of work by pressing record is not doing it knowing that you are making a difference, but really just surrendering, releasing, and just having a knowing that what you're doing is really part of this beautiful collective that we all are part of and we live in on this big blue marble. That takes me to the next thing that I want to do with this episode. You're going to get a list of all the books in the library. They're going to be tagged so that you can check back on those episodes, watch at your leisure, read at your leisure. And listen, one other thing I'd love to mention, there have been studies that have been coming out. You might be hearing a lot about this now, about the benefits of micro reading. So it's not just reading a book from start to finish It might be reading 10 minutes of one book and 10 minutes of another. I'm giving you a collection of amazing books to choose from in so many different topics that we cover here on Holistically Speaking, which is all about being kind to your mind and living holistically, right? And being a happy, healthy grown up with humor, understanding, and gratitude towards yourself. Being able to do that is part of that masterclass that you're creating in your own life. So, in addition to that, I want to know which ones really made a difference for you. And reach out to me, let me know, because the next thing I was really thinking I'd love to do as we dive into season 6 is having people back on Holistically Speaking that have been here before. Where are they now? I get curious about people. And yes, I keep in touch with a lot of folks, but hearing their stories and their growth and their experiences and their ups and their downs and what the last 5 years has been for them, I don't know. I have a healthy curiosity about that. So if there is someone you would like to see back on this show, let me know and we will reach out to them and get them back in the seat to share the story and see what the last 5 years has been for them. Another thing that I would love to share with you is the importance of thinking outside the box. As you know, I talk about Hug It Out, which is the method I use, the method I created. And Hug It Out is in the healing, there is humor, understanding, and gratitude towards self. And I put a big exclamation on that last part, the gratitude, because a lot of times we're looking outside of ourselves for the happiness, for the appreciation, for the understanding. But it really goes back to self. It really goes back to finding the humor and the healing and the experiences we've been on. It goes back to that understanding of our core values and who we are and how we show up in the world. And it really goes back to the gratitude we have for ourselves. It's very hard giving ourselves accolades and being appreciative for the things that we do in this world and we put out in this world. I want you to take a moment to think about what you're grateful for about how you've shown up in the world the last 5 years. How have you grown? What have you done? Maybe you have written a book and there's a seat for you on this podcast, or maybe you just have a story to share. That kind of moved me into thinking about something else. As I continue to write the book, and really start diving into writing, just free writing, really, which has been so therapeutic for me. Stumbling on something like Substack has been one of my greatest pleasures. And if you're on Substack, let me know. I recently started my Substack, and I'm finding it to be such a beautiful place to learn from other writers and also connect with other people that find value in storytelling and writing and also reading. And if you're interested in subscribing to my Substack, in addition to the Holistically Speaking podcast, I hope you're doing that as well. My Substack is the Brain Candy Blueprint. I invite you to join me there, releasing really loving and inspiring topics and conversations through my writing, which is so much a part of what the book is. But this gives me a chance to just share a little more about ways to be kind to your mind, about how to hug it out and find that healing and the humor, understanding, and gratitude, and really be that happy and healthy grown up that you deserve to be. So I hope you'll join me there. And to just touch on gratitude real quick, I want to go back to that because it should always end with gratitude. I just want to say, in addition to being grateful for what I'm sharing with the world and grateful that I pressed record that first day back in June of 2020, I'm also really grateful for you. Your time is valuable, and I am grateful for you tuning in, whether you've been here since episode 1 or you just found us, for you listening on any of the platforms or even watching on YouTube. I'm grateful for you subscribing. The people who have been behind this podcast for the last 5 years, people who are still with me to this day, including my dear friend Lipbone Redding, who has been providing the music from day one and was on the show. The producers that I've had on the show, Alan Seals, shout out to you, my friend, because you were the guy that said, "Why aren't you doing a podcast?" We sat there at Google headquarters and we came up with a strategy. And here we are today. So I'm grateful to my dear friend, Alan, who also is the co founder of the Broadway Podcast Network and has his own podcast. the theater podcast. So shout out to you. Those folks who have been editors behind this podcast, who have also been just really supportive, asking me to join different podcast networks, supporting me just by coming to hear me speak about podcasting when I've been at conferences, just my fellow podcasters for pressing record and knowing that we're all on this journey together. There's so much more I could say. And I think where I really want to close this is just to remember that you yourself have a masterclass in you. And I am so grateful to know that you have taken the time to tune in, to be here, to share the journey with me. And hearing from you brings me such joy. I read all of your comments, your emails, your reviews, your testimonials, just any way you've reached out to me on social media. I do not take that lightly. I appreciate every single one of you. And I'll continue to be that type of podcaster, but more importantly, that type of human being. I can't wait to see what the future holds for Hilistically Speaking and where we will go in the next 5 years. And if you were to ask me today, will you be podcasting? And what do you expect to happen from this podcast? I might not know what the outcome is because, as they say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. But I will tell you this, I don't see myself stopping. You have been part of me falling in love with the journey of podcasting, and I thank you for that. So on that note, I love you, I believe in you, and as always, I'm sending hugs your way. And thank you. Be well.